I think we have all heard the news that the video game Habromania has finally come out, or at least the demo of the first chapter, because there will be 12. While this chapter was more of a tutorial to the mechanics, it doesn't mean they haven't given us new details to create our own theories. One of these details was the poem The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Well, the last part of the poem with its own illustration. And it makes quite a lot of sense they've used this poem, because a lot of the themes can already be seen throughout the chapter and can be further explored with how those symbols are used during the playthrough. For anyone who hasn't read the poem or explored its meanings, in this poem the protagonist has just lost Lenore, a young woman who he probably had a romantic relationship with. While reading ancient stories on the dead of night, the protagonist hears a knock and a raven ends up entering through the window, standing over a bust of Pallas. Through the rest of the poem, the protagonist tries to make sense of this and even asks the raven questions, to which he only answers with "nevermore," making the character fall into madness. I'm sure most of you have already seen the Raven parallel, and some even the Pallas one. Either way, I recommend reading it because it's wonderfully written and also because that way you can look into its themes. During The Raven, the character slowly falls into madness while trying to make sense of what is going on. At first, he thinks the Raven is a messenger from Pluto, aka Hades, and might bring some sort of message. This is, of course, debunked as the bird only answers with "nevermore," and between this and the death of Lenore, he slowly falls into madness. While we don't have a character falling into madness because of the death of a loved one, at least not that we know of, we do have a character that falls her way into the story and has very interesting ways of seeing things. Our dear protagonist, Alice. From the moment the game starts, she is, well, having conversations with herself, actually. Now, when I say conversations, I don't mean she just says what she thinks. Well, I do mean that, but also that at times she'll use a you or an Alice, while in others an I. This, I think, already gives us this sense of loneliness and could also refer to how she might have a lonely life wherever she comes from. This then leads her to talk to, what we can guess, are objects and animals without consciousness and creating problems for herself, such as with the Raven, who doesn't even talk back, just expresses feelings with her eyes that might be just inventions of Alice. Of course, this isn't helped by the fact that Wonderland in itself is very weird. From talking cats who know German to falling through a hole and not even getting a bruise, this world isn't like ours at all. Though it is quite interesting how Alice reacts to everything. I mean, the girl doesn't even have her priorities straight. You mean to tell me you will accept a mouse with clothes and money, statues moving, a painting stealing a key and then throwing it at you, but you drop the line at a cat talking? Don't get me wrong, I get it's 1940 and talking toys weren't exactly a thing, but still, we have bigger problems to worry about. Because trust me, she doesn't worry about some stuff like she should. It's like she realizes what is going on isn't exactly normal and just accepts it as a general truth. Which, okay, makes sense, she's doing the most she can out of the situation. But really, she literally says it's best not to think about things too hard sometimes. But at least we have the diary, which I think really gets us to learn about Alice in ways nothing else does. Since there isn't a real introduction to where she is now, we go straight to her thoughts and also see her drawings. Thanks to it, we learn that she has a bit of problems at first writing her name, that she likes drawing, and how she sees the world in general. One of the most noticeable things is her constant drawing of flowers and how she feels like someone is watching her. Another theme of the poem is, of course, death. Not only is the death of Lenore the main cause of the madness that the protagonist suffers, but he also believes that the Raven comes from the other side due to a mix of superstition and grief. This is then further shown in the answer the Raven gives every time: nevermore. Now, while Alice doesn't see anyone die and she doesn't seem to be grieving even before her amnesia, since her clothes are quite colorful, it doesn't mean she doesn't have a relationship with death. A quite direct one, to be fair, since the moment that she gets out of the place she's fallen to, she finds a skeleton. This seems to be almost a warning of what is to come, which is then explained when the cat comments it has been a while since a human fell here and they normally don't get this far. Of course, Alice doesn't know of this until the end of the chapter, and like always, she decides to talk to a skeleton. Though she is self-aware he's dead and can't answer her, unlike with herself or the Raven, which Alice actually finds useful since she can steal from him. There are two things she steals. The main and the one we'll find more useful since she'll use it throughout all chapters is the diary. Now I've already talked about it, but I do think it's worth commenting how normalized she finds the whole skeleton topic after the initial shock. And even though she admits she isn't fond of skeletons, she takes time to draw him not once but twice. One of those is even imagine him alive. On the other hand, we find a ring, which we can use for one of the puzzles. And while the description of it doesn't really tell us anything, just a quite dark joke, its drawing tells us another story. On it, we can see the quote Memento Mori, which refers to the idea we'll all die. In general, this is very weird because while in Europe these jewelry were kind of common, they were normally for remembering the dead and mourning, not for a wedding. I know this is just my mind going sideways, but with what they've given this skeleton, he might as well represent the protagonist of the poem, the bride being already dead. Apart from our skeleton friend, we can already notice small hints towards the relationship of Wonderland with death, or at least this part of Wonderland. With the puzzle of the fountain, we get to see one of the most interesting sculptures that not only shows death, but also the Queen of Hearts before or after she became queen. We'll hopefully discover that later on. Apart from this, the environment itself is quite curious. Dead rats holding the statue, a dressing table, and what seems to be a memorial and a red rose? It's easy to start wondering what is going on. Even if the Queen of Hearts is dead, the statue is really weird and the memorial doesn't even have a plate or any type of explanation who it's for, unless you count the rose for that. Later on, when you finish the puzzle of the fountain starts going and both the eyes of the girl and Death start glowing green. While I had theorized that green eyes meant that it was a cat, it might be something bigger if statues can get it. Talking about the cat, he tells us a very weird poem about a princess who tries to escape a tower but ends up falling to her death. In it, we also find that the princess is oblivious to anything happening on the outside. Now, it could be the Queen of Hearts, since she is trying to escape Wonderland, but I wouldn't take out of the equation the White Queen. I mean, she literally lives in a tower, it cannot get much more clear than that, right? On the dressing table, we can find one more thing, the first note, while the second is found on the second floor of this place. On these notes, we more or less learn about how life and death work, or how whoever is writing them believes they work. For them, death and life aren't enemies, but two sides of the same coin. One couldn't exist without the other. But this person has another revelation, which is that death doesn't keep. He is not the owner of these souls, but the one who takes them only to leave them there. Curiously, it is also implied that there are a lot of deaths going on at the moment of the writing. That or death is busy all the time. If it was the former, we could be talking about a war, which also reminds me of a certain someone. Apart from this, it's a bit weird that we have two depictions of death, but they aren't really similar in their concept. While the drawings are more dramatic, conceptual and godlike, the statue is much more down to earth, and while it's the one with the pitcher and giving the water to a mortal, it feels more human and practical. Its only side of the deity, apart from being a literal skeleton, being a golden decoration that's quite reminiscent on the one used in medieval art, and that feels like it was put there after the statue was already done. We could even guess that the one in the notes is the most famous, since it's also the one shown in the illustration of the poem. Finally, we get to talk about one of the most direct symbols that the poem and the game share, which is our dear raven. In the poem, it represents death and being its messenger, further implied by the illustration, but also the memories of Lenore and grief, with the raven sitting atop of the bust of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and symbolizing how the rational mind can be overtaken by grief. Now, as I said, we also get a raven of our own in the game. This is the first living creature we get to talk with and that answers, or at least is implied by the narrator's notes or the description of her reaction. She is also the only puzzle that I'm aware of where we have two endings. That's a little trait, I guess, because for now it doesn't change the rest of the playthrough. But that doesn't mean it doesn't totally matter, because while in one of them we make her change nest with shiny objects, on the second we literally kill her. She dies. And you know who else is dead? Exactly, Lenore. But that's not the only human she parallels, because it seems to be that Alice also parallels the raven of the game, and as such, the raven of the book. Now, this small theory is hanging by a very thin thread, because I only get this from Alice's conversation with the cat, where she comments she likes shiny things, in this case the key, while the puzzle was about getting a nest with enough shiny things for the raven to change to it. This is further added by the cat commenting it's been a while since a human has been here, and by her already affecting the environment, for example, bringing back the river. There are a lot of ways this parallel could work out. If you want to be optimistic, you could think that she's going to help restore Wonderland to a bright future, but our safest bet is that, like the raven that is the one to bring death in the illustration, or the lost draw in the protagonist's sanity, Alice will be the final puzzle for Wonderland to fully fall and for its citizens to finally escape. Talking about citizens, does anyone know who do we really count as a citizen in Wonderland? I mean, Alice will surely talk to everyone, no matter if they can answer or not, but we must admit there is a difference between the spider, the raven, the cat and the mouse, right? I think it's easy to say that the spider is clearly a full animal. It doesn't react to Alice and it doesn't seem to act different than animals in our world. On the other hand, the rat is fully clothed and even holds coins, which should make it a full citizen, I think. But it starts to get messy with the raven and the cat. Does the first one count since she reacts to what you say, or does it not because she can't talk? If so, then why does the cat not wear clothes apart from the bow? Does that mean he's just going around, appearing and disappearing naked? All of this makes one start questioning what are the real points you need to be a full citizen. And then we have the other topic with their relationship with humans. The rats sprinted away, they left a coin behind, which he must not have a lot of since he's a rat and that's a human-sized coin, and they didn't even care. What have humans done wrong for him to act like this? It begs so many questions. This then becomes a bigger problem with all the portraits of human beings and all statues being human, like, are the rats lesser citizens or from another kingdom? So, apart from the raven, Pallas is also one of the biggest symbols of the poem, not only because of the whole emotion over reason, but also because the author commonly used Greek mythology as a means to get ideas and themes through, which, guess what, this game also does. Now, in the trailer, we do see Pallas past as part of a puzzle, but for now the only sculpture we get are the ones that, for some reason, react to objects. Not only that, but they seem to move while you aren't looking, which isn't that good for what we can guess. So, the rest of this little segment is based on the comment of Icy about my very incorrect knowledge on who each statue represented, in which not only did she explain which goddess was each, but also why, so thank you a lot. Going in order of place, we have Aphrodite, quite covered in white flowers, and that seems to be more of a cameo than anything, since she isn't in any puzzle. Then there's Medusa, who we get to petrify, even though she's already a statue, so instead she kind of explodes? Which doesn't make that much sense, since Perseus used the shield as a mirror to not get her gaze to affect him, but we can just get behind that, I think. Afterwards, there's Persephone, who is the reason the seasons occur, since she spends half a year with Demeter and half a year with Hades. Interesting enough, her base is surrounded by flowers and we actually have to give her a rose to do the puzzle. Then we have Thermes, the Titan of Justice, and which I still believe represents the Red Kingdom, ergo, the Queen of Hearts. Nobody's getting me off that word. Actually, her being Thermes and not Athena fully agrees with my theory and cleans the plot holes that it had, and her going off the rails afterwards fully helps with my theory, since it could totally be something the Queen of Hearts has been dealing with. Finally, we then have the granny and the pregnant woman. Now these two, as well as Persephone, are part of the puzzle of the mother, maiden and crown. Being Persephone the maiden, since she was a maiden before the whole thing with Mary and Hades. Apart from this, being a quite nice detail, the moon, as we already talked about, will probably refer to death, as shown through the notes and it being quite common across the different arts. And they all have a relationship with him, as sad as that sounds. But as much as I have just been talking about whatever I please for the longest time, I do have some ideas over what's going to actually happen on the next chapters, which is probably what interests you the most. For this, we can start looking into the description of the game. Now, normally here you wouldn't find much, but taking into account that the description will not change, it's making us some canon spoilers such as new characters and some details about them. Alice's only interesting detail is her appearance with the Drink Me potion, but the rest have small and big changes since we haven't met them yet. The Mad Hatter is now Hatter, who is in love and has a white rose. Also, his hat has the same pushpins that appear on the description. Then we have the Queen of Hearts, who seems to be already a bit mad and might just be a Alice, coming from another world and now stuck in Wonderland. Finally, we then have the White Queen and the White Rabbit. The Queen is the boss of the White Rabbit, but he's the one calling the shots, really. Apart from this, we have the White Thing, who, if you stop at the right detail, kind of looks like Alice's brother. But that's not all, because I noticed one more thing. The picture frame and the background. Now, the first one doesn't really tell us much, just the economic situation of the characters. Probably. Except for the White Bean and Alice, who have the exact same one. I'll let that to interpretation. But the more interesting is the background. Because for some reason, the Tea Party members, the Queen of Hearts and the cat share background, while the White Queen, the White Rabbit and Alice share another. Is this implying where Alice and enemies will be? Or who had a relationship before the amnesia? Only the future can tell. Within the game, we can also find some details on what the future has for us. The most clear is that we're going to enter the house in the next chapter, which will probably lead to puzzles we've already seen on the trailer, such as the one of Palace. If you look for smaller clues, we can already guess we're on the Red Kingdom, or near enough to it, since the coin that the rat leaves behind pictures the Queen of Hearts. Then there are the tarot cards. In the trailer, we could see two. The 0, which is the Fool, and the 5th, which is the Rodent King. Now, the rats aren't a specific thing in the book. We do have a mouse, which tells us the mouse tail. This poem happens after the animals and Alice are able to escape the pool of tears, and while this hasn't happened before, we can guess it will happen soon. While this is a small detail, on the description of the stone pitcher it says that it smells faintly of the ocean, meaning that the water of the river probably comes from the ocean. And adding the amount of rats we've already seen, it began surprising that we'll meet them on the next few chapters.